we went from saying this was anti-Semitism to watching Mike Huckabee become the leader of the BDS movement. And I did not like the fact that I found someone in my room rooting around in my stuff that should not have been there at the King David Hotel when I came back to my room when no one was expecting me to be back in my room. And I remember there's a QR code on it. And what we were supposed to do was go talk to donors. And then if they liked you, they scanned your QR code to make a donation, like on the spot.
Matt Gaetz recently revealed on Timcast how and why he drifted away from the Israel First mindset as he was in Congress, telling tales regarding the truth about AIPAC trips, how he believed he might have been bugged by Israeli officials during one of them, and an absurd scheme in which American congressmen were lined up and essentially sold off to the highest Zionist donors in Israel. So let's get a look at this. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
And as I understand, you used to be relatively more pro-Israel than you are now. Can you talk a little bit more about how you grew into that position as somebody who was very pro-Israel and what the situation was like in Congress for somebody who was, and then now on the outside who is, I don't want to call you, I don't know if you'd say anti or just less supportive?
Yeah, I question the depth and the degree of the relationship now, and I have migrated on the issue. And by the way, I think a lot of young Americans have. I think Charlie Kirk's migration on the issue, my own migration on the issue, tracks where a lot of Americans are. And for me, initially, I resented the fact that there was no appreciation for nuance. Like if you asked any questions about any decision of the Israeli government in any place regarding settlements, regarding Gaza, whatever, you were like, you had deviated from the script. And I just, in any policy area, I had resentment over that. And then I saw the way the AIPAC worked, and that was weird for like a country lawyer like me. I remember my first AIPAC reception, and like your fundraiser tells you have to go, and your chief of staff tells you have to go, your committee chairman all tell you have to go, and you get there and you wear this name badge, and I remember there's a QR code on it. And what we were supposed to do was go talk to donors, and then if they liked you, they scanned your QR code to make a donation, like on the spot. And so can you just imagine how demoralizing that is to like be told that your job for the next several hours to go chat people up, hoping they would scan you like a can of tomato soup on the way out of the meeting.
Just think of that. On Tuesday, you have to kiss the wall. And then on Wednesday, you have to kiss the ass of Zionist donors in Israel to donate to you as if you're like chattel standing in front of them hoping for donations. This is absurd. Why do U.S. politicians continue these humiliation rituals? Just utterly insane. And he's right. He is standing at a place where many Americans are at on the Israel issue, and it becomes more and more glaring and hypocritical as it comes on the right when you're preaching an America First message, when it's so clear to the average person that follows these things that this is an Israel First administration. It's not America First. And Israel's interests contravene those of the United States. It's not just bad, but they actually act against our interests. So this is correct. It's a groundbreaking revelation to hear this about the QR code scam that they had going. But it's not surprising in some ways because this whole thing is a humiliation scam.
I mean, it's literally purchasing.
Right. And so I saw that and I was like, wow, that is so freaking weird. And then, I was in Israel. I went multiple times, and I did not like the fact that I found someone in my room rooting around in my stuff that should not have been there at the King David Hotel when I came back to my room when no one was expecting me to be back in my room. And I just
presumably Israeli law enforcement.
Well, I don't know who it was. I just thought, like, this is weird. All of these things combined are odd, and then the policy outgrowth seems to be an obsession about the Middle East that has not served my generation well. I just don't think we're good at it. And that is not a criticism even of Israel. Like, we've been talking about Syria. We had battles in Syria where forces funded by the Pentagon were fighting forces funded by the CIA. If you just wait long enough in Syria, whoever you're giving money to becomes the enemy, and whoever you're fighting becomes your friend. And
that is so true about American foreign policy in general. I mean, the U.S. supported Saddam in the Iraq-Iran war, and then Saddam became the enemy of the U.S. The U.S. supported the Mujahideen in Afghanistan, and then Osama bin Laden and al-Qaeda became the enemy of the United States. This happens over and over and over, and it just really shows the absurd ramifications of these empire-building schemes abroad. I think that was put perfectly. And yeah, this story about the King David Hotel and potentially being bugged, I'm not saying he said that, but it it seems to open up the possibility of that with him not sure of who was there during one of these AIPAC trips where they take you, to the wall and to all these propaganda sites designed to instill the pro-Israel fervor within each new fledgling U.S. congressman. That is what he endured as a congressman, and man, that is telling. It's just these things come up time and time again. I don't think they can all be coincidental in how much stranglehold of power is exuded or tried to be exuded by the Israeli regime. They're doing an amazing job of it. AIPAC boasts about essentially, having the support, and that means owning the voting patterns of 361 reps in Congress. That's an insane amount. That's like 2/3. And we're supposed to believe that there's nothing wrong with this. And he's so right. This doesn't serve U.S. interests. With Operation Timber Sycamore, the CIA plot to fund Al-Qaeda and ISIS in Syria because Israel didn't like Assad, that is the ramifications of this when you had two factions pitted against each other, both supported by the U.S. government. It's treacherous. It shouldn't continue.
I think that increasingly Israel views the world this way. There used to be like two dominant capital markets in the world, New York and London. And Israel felt like they were very comfortable under that dynamic. And now we live in this world where the most important capital markets are in Riyadh and Abu Dhabi and Dubai and Doha. And I don't love that. I didn't cause that to happen. But I believe Netanyahu is trying to externalize his conflict. I believe he has serious domestic problems. And the way around those problems is to just sort of send the Middle East awash in chaos and regime change and maybe some war migrants moving around. And if all of that happens, then there will be a reversion to the mean. London and New York will run things again, and we won't have to deal with the pesky emergence of these Arab markets.
Yeah, totally agree with them regarding the externalization of domestic woes, which we're going to bring down Netanyahu, by the way, in 2022. They're going to, in 2023, they were going to bring him down on fraud and corruption charges, which still stand, but he's been able to just delay himself out of those things by, striking militarily 7 of his neighbors, continuing this genocide in Gaza, which right now there's a ceasefire for. I'm not too hopeful because he broke the first ceasefire. There seemed to be no backlash from the Trump administration on that. The dollars keep flowing no matter what. Trump says if this ceasefire gets broken, it won't be by Israel. But man, I am skeptical of that. I'm cynical of that, downright so, based on Israel's track record. We'll see, but the fact is it doesn't erase what's already happened, and that's 100,000 slaughtered Palestinians in the name of this Israel first madness that our ruling class is pursuing. It can't continue, and he's right. On this. I would like him to go even further, obviously, but this is so indicative of where the right is headed on this issue. It's what's causing the schism, and I don't think the Mark Levins and Ben Shapiro's can sell a better story than this in terms of persuading people.
If I could follow up with you, it seems as though there's a growing anti-Israel sentiment, definitely on the left, also on the right. What do you think is fueling this anti-Israel sentiment?
I think that with young people, it's more driven by age than anything else, more than by politics, more than anything. So if you say, what is it about young people that is really causing this change? And I think that whenever you tell young people there's certain things you can't say or can't talk about or can't do, there is like a natural resistance. Like this is our ideological curfew that we're being given by the boomers, that we're not allowed to question the U.S.-Israel relationship, and there's natural reaction to that. Like even the whole BDS thing.
Yeah, totally right. I do think this is a big part of it. Typical, rebellion within teenagers and young adults to do what you're told that you can't do just innately because it becomes, a shiny red button you have to place. There's also a lot of sympathy for the Palestinians amongst young people for humanitarian reasons. They'll say that's Hamas propaganda, but no, that's just a general impulse to not want babies to be slaughtered. That's what I think. And on the right, you have young people that, can't take the hypocrisy of preaching America first when it's Israel first. I think it's a combination of multiple factors, but he's right. The demographics show that more than politics or anything else, it is that kind of innate characteristic.
all we'd heard on the right is, BDS is anti-Semitism. We have to be against BDS. BDS is the worst thing in the world. And then Mike Huckabee gets mad at the Interior Minister in Israel because he's not approving visas for touring Zionist Christians. Right. And Huckabee says, my response to this is to tell people in the United States to cancel their trips, to stop sending money to these groups, and I may respond by punishing the Israelis by not approving their visas to the United States, which sounded a whole lot like boycott the trip, divest your donation, and sanction with visas. And so we went from saying this was anti-Semitism to watching Mike Huckabee become the leader of the BDS movement.
Yeah, it's never an issue when the Zionists do it. When the Zionists do it, it's always justified. It's always out of a pro-patriotic sentiment. But if you're a non-Zionist, that's evil Hamas propaganda. They use the same tactics. It's just so absurd. The hypocrisy is so glaring from this administration and Huckabee, some that doesn't even acknowledge any, legitimacy of the Palestinians in general, or, any kind of fortitude or sovereignty for them.
I mean, the left-wing view in the world is that the big villains of the current conflicts are the Russians and the Israelis. But I will say this for the Russians. They're not asking anybody else to pay for it. They're not asking anybody else to have diplomatic cover for it. They're not asking anybody else to handle the refugee problem that will happen as a result of their actions. Israel is. Israel is asking for endless U.S. financial and military support. It's asking for unending diplomatic cover. I mean, cover the United Nations. The U.S. is Israel's bagman, effectively, what is supposed to be a global forum for reducing conflict. Additionally, for any of Israel's major objectives, which basically undeclared regime change in Iran, they need the United States. They say that openly. And additionally, if they're not going to just murder everybody in Gaza, which I think they still could, most of the real plans are a U.S. redevelopment plan in Gaza, or basically a U.S. ethnic cleansing by moving all of these people on boats to places like Libya or Madagascar. The Israeli Navy is nothing to really write home about. It would have to be the U.S. Navy. And when you're talking about subverting the MAGA agenda, quote unquote, and talking about how mass deportations aren't happening, allegedly because of Thomas Massie, I think we are far less likely to do mass deportations in the United States because we are spending all of our time doing mass deportations in Gaza.
That is so true, man. Kurt Mills, this is Kurt Mills on the show too. I didn't realize this, but he's so right about this when he says, hey, my ire or indignation's not exactly focused on, China or Russia, despite how horrific those regimes are supposed to be, why they're the CIA boogeymen, because they're not extracting billions of dollars from the U.S. Treasury. The second that they try to do that and succeed in that, they will earn that proportion of my ire and indignation toward U.S. foreign policy. But right now, it's Israel first and Ukraine first. That is the truth. Those are the countries with influence in our government, not Qatar or Russia. That's neocon propaganda. And he is extremely right about this. Totally agree with him.
That's odd given the biggest supporters of the president who's this agenda is for are Zionists, of course. I did want to have
the biggest supporters of the president who pushes agenda for are Zionists.
Who pushes the yes,
other than Joe Biden.
Part of the MAGA agenda
I'm a Zionist, Joe Biden. Yeah.
that people voted for was to get out of the Middle East.
No one is more America first than Zionists. I mean, it's quite the claim.
Donald Trump went to South Carolina and called George W. Bush a war criminal.
Yeah.
over these wars in Iraq. He was like he was more Rand Paul than Rand Paul. He would call Rand Paul and say, "I'm more libertarian than you are."
Massey's told a similar story that Trump would call him up and somehow say like, oh, I'm more libertarian than you are. It's just preposterous. But this is true. How can you sell that America first is Zionist in orientation? That's a key cornerstone of the America first agenda. You just can't. It's the political and, cultural support for a foreign country. It reprioritizes, American issues in a way that's centric to Israel, not the United States. No one can sell that anymore. It's quite the tall tale, and to see the Zionists try to spin this as to some sort of thing that somehow is America first is just not taking hold with people anymore. Maybe it took hold with some of them after October 7th, but I don't even think that's the case to the degree many people purport, and history didn't begin on October 7th. This has been a long-term struggle going back to 1967 when it comes to Gaza, and frankly, to the creation of Israel itself in 47 and 48 and the Nakba. This goes back a long way, and it's because that the globalists at the UN, with support from the US and Britain, embarked in a mass land robbery. And that's what this is. That's what the partition plan was, just taking land from Palestinians and giving it to Zionist Jewish settlers. That's what caused this in the first place. Now, that's not, that's very pertinent to what we're going through right now. But at the same time, I'm so glad to see people like Matt Gaetz drifting away. And one point he hit on that I want to talk about more here too, is that there's literally no wiggle room when it comes to questioning Israel, asking questions about Israel, having minor critiques of Israel. And that's one of the things that he said turned him off this pro-Israel, Israel first course. And that's so true. We're still seeing that playbook being utilized right now against people like Megyn Kelly for daring to tell the truth that there's basically no one under 30 that supports Israel. I mean, that's not technically true, but it's not too far away from the absolute truth. And having Marjorie Taylor Greene on her show telling the truth, and having Charlie Kirk on her show talking about his frustrations with this, despite the fact that the two, bent over backwards to, embark upon an ideal, Hasbara Zionist propaganda when talking about, hey, we can't trust any of the pictures coming out of Gaza and this isn't a genocide. Despite that, they're still taking fire at people like Megyn Kelly, despite her being a self-professed Zionist. So Matt is right. There's literally no wiggle room here. With the Israel lobby, it's all or nothing. You can't even ask questions. It's just defaulting to you're an anti-Semite, you're an enemy, you're a Jew hater, and here's all this garbage to justify that. Well, Americans are starting to see through this more and more. I do think Matt is at a place where many Americans are, and it's great to hear his stories. I mean, the QR code cattle story is just insane, as is bugging his hotel potentially. He didn't say that, but that seems to be on our minds if you're thinking about what Israel does. We know they engage in blackmail. If you don't believe that, look into the Shin Bet incident. And if Epstein was a Mossad asset, he certainly did on the grandest scale imaginable. So let me know what you guys think down below. Where's the right on this issue? Is the right going to hold up as a coalition along these dividing lines of the Israel First agenda? Let me know in the comments down below. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Also subscribe to Timcast. Appreciate this. Have some disagreements with Tim. He invited me on the show, though. That says something to him. He's had Max Blumenthal and others, so I'll give him credit for that. Also, if you like this video and my commentary, please consider becoming a member. If you click the join button below, you can help support me. And in return for that, I'll give you all of my episodes, all my videos, before they go live to the general public on YouTube. And until I see you guys next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. Peace out, guys. Catch you in the next one.